You've been learning a language for a while and you know a lot of vocabulary and you understand quite a lot when you listen to the language or you read or when you watch videos. So your comprehension is decent, but when it comes to speaking, you still struggle. You can't find the words. Your active vocabulary is much more limited. This probably happened to you, especially if you've been learning through comprehensible input, which is what is the popular thing to do these days. And the problem with it, one of the many problems with it, is that it's just all passive. And when it comes to speaking, you need to develop active vocabulary. And I'm going to teach you how to do it. Yes, of course, the more you listen to the language, the better. The more you read, the better. Keep doing it because eventually you learn enough words and you learn them actively as well. But the problem is, for the most part, you need a lot of exposure to the language to just learn the words. So you need to be exposed to those words in context over and over again just to be able to recognize them. And even when you recognize them, even when you're able to recognize them, you need even more exposure, way more exposure to finally remember them correctly, like in time, fast enough to use them in context when you need them. So what happens is that you end up using what you already know, what you know really well, which is very, very limited. This happens to a lot of people, used to happen to me. The solution to this is working specifically on your output, on uh, your active vocabulary specifically. And one of the obvious ways to work on your output is just talking to people, right? And of course, if you have the chance to talk to people, go talk to people. The more conversation practice you have, the better. But if you mostly learn to speak by talking to people, what will 100% happen to you, unless you're talking to some people who are intellectuals or something, or you go to very different, or you spend all day talking to people in very different contexts, very different people and very different contexts. What will happen to you is that you'll end up talking about the same things the same way with the same people. You end up using what you already know. When you're talking to people, we all tend to focus on the goal, which is communicating, not practicing our speaking skills for the most part, unless you're meeting people with the specific goal of speaking, like practicing your speaking. And even then, you will still mostly use what you already know. You will not force yourself to use words that you don't know all that well. So, what you should do instead is practice using words that you don't normally use, and also not only words, not only vocab, but also sentence structures, grammar that you don't normally use. I'm not talking about studying grammar, of course. I'm simply talking about using active recall. So you take either your language islands or mass sentences. I recommend you start with the language islands, and then once you are comfortable using those, then you use the mass sentence list, which is probably much longer and more comprehensive. It's got more vocab than in your language islands. It's less. Each one of the sentences will be less useful than your language islands. So learn the language islands first to be able to speak in all the situations you want to have. You want to be able to communicate and you want to have conversations. But once you know those, then learn this, because if you learn 10,000, 20,000 sentences, over 10,000 words in total, and you learn them with active recall. You learn to translate into the language. Active recall meaning you read it in English and you try to say it in the target language, in this case, Portuguese, whatever. You have French or Spanish here or Chinese or whatever you're learning. And you try to say it and then you get the answer. So you get it corrected as well, which is great. You're making mistakes, you're getting feedback. But the main thing is you're working on your active vocabulary constantly because you're forcing yourself to use words that you wouldn't normally use. Maybe you've never said fishing before, or you've never thought about it. Um, but now you have to think about it. Yeah. So you simply uh, you simply read it and need to start over. Uh, Tenho começado de novo. Eu preciso começar de novo. Try to say it. Mistakes. Okay, then you read it aloud correctly. We have to switch it up. Temos que mudá-lo. Temos que mudar isso. I was frustrated. Eu fiquei frustrado. Fiquei frustrado. I'm 32. Tenho 32 anos. 32 anos. I'd like to check out. Gostaria de fazer check out. Gostaria de fazer check out. Uh, how do you say off? Eu tive folga na segunda-feira. I didn't know this one. Have a day off. You see, that's something that I wouldn't know unless I, again, I haven't done it with the whole list, but and I never have days off anyway because I, you know, I have my own business. But you get the idea. Like this is an expression that I would never have thought of on my own. Now because of this, okay, the Chiva Fall Guys, I had a day off. Now I know that. Maybe I don't know it yet, but I'll try again tomorrow the same list and probably second or third try you'll probably remember. And you're also listening to them. Yeah, I'm just binge listening to this. So eventually I'll learn it just by sheer repetition, listening, shadowing, and active recall. But mostly active recall is where you learn to use more words and more structures, more expressions, just more language in general. You have to get out of your comfort zone. And if you just learn to speak by talking to people, which you should absolutely do, just talk to people, but train on your own. Practice because you will always use what you're comfortable with when you're talking to people. So you have to train on your own and make yourself uncomfortable and use words and expressions on your own. Be uncomfortable on your own, like that's training. And then your comfort zone expands. And then when you're talking to people, now you're comfortable with a lot more words and a lot more expressions, and you'll be able to say more. Yeah, it's as simple as that. So you train for conversation by doing this. Just translate, translate, translate into the language. Again, this is going to be extremely hard unless you've been also listening to it a lot. So just binge listen to them as well, right?